Nostradamus's chilling prophecy. Nostradamus saw eternal night, approaching 2025 prayer for light. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Mahatma Gandhi. Nostradamus saw eternal night approaching 2025. It's a haunting phrase, isn't it? One that stirs something ancient inside us, an echo of fear, a pull of mystery. It lingers in the mind like a distant storm on the horizon. It stops us, invites us to listen more closely, to wonder, what did he truly see? And now, we find ourselves in a year that many already feel is heavy with change, chaos, and uncertainty. We have to ask ourselves, is this eternal night a literal prediction, an eclipse of the skies, a cosmic calamity? Or is it something more symbolic, more personal? Could it be the kind of darkness that doesn't fall from above, but rises from within? A shadow cast not by the stars, but by our confusion, our disconnection, our collective fear. In 2025, maybe it's not the sun we're losing, but our sense of clarity, our shared values, even our faith in the future. For generations, people have turned to prophets like Nostradamus not just for predictions, but for meaning, for a sense of control in uncertain times. But what if these prophecies aren't meant to predict the future? What if they're meant to reflect the present? What if this chilling vision of eternal night is not a warning from the skies, but a mirror to our own spiritual nightfall? And in facing it, what if the real prophecy is not about fear, but about remembering our need for light? Today, we don't just explore what Nostradamus might have seen, we ask a deeper question: can we still be the light in a time that feels so dark? A darkness of our own making? So, when we hold up that mirror, what exactly do we see reflected back in the landscape of 2025? If this eternal night is a metaphor, then what is it a metaphor for? I think, if we're being honest with ourselves, we don't have to look very far. The feeling is all around us. It's a quiet hum of anxiety beneath the surface of daily life. It's not a darkness that blots out the sun, but one that can dim the spirit. And it seems to come from a few distinct, yet overlapping, shadows. The first, and perhaps the most painful for many of us, is what we might call the darkness of misunderstanding. Think about the conversations that now feel difficult. The ones around the holiday dinner table, or with an old friend from high school, or even the neighbor you've known for 20 years. It feels as though the political divide in our country has become more than just a difference of opinion. It's grown into a chasm, separating not just neighbors, but families. It's a profound disconnect, where it feels like we are no longer speaking the same language, even when we're using the same words. We've stopped seeing a person with a different viewpoint and started seeing a label, a caricature. And in that space, genuine communication withers. The common ground we once took for granted seems to have eroded, leaving us on opposite sides of a canyon, shouting into the wind. This isn't just a political issue, it's a deeply personal one. It's a quiet grief for the easy connection we used to share. That, right there, is a kind of darkness, a social darkness, that leaves people feeling isolated and misunderstood, even in their own communities. And layered on top of this social divide is a new and unsettling shadow, one cast by something we created ourselves. This is the darkness of uncertainty, born from the staggering pace of technology. In 2025, we live with a new kind of unknown, the rise of artificial intelligence. On one hand, it's a tool of immense promise, capable of wonders we are only just beginning to grasp. But on the other, it casts a long shadow over the job market and the very nature of truth itself. There's a quiet worry in the back of so many minds. Will the skills I've spent a lifetime building still be valuable in 5 or 10 years? It's a deeply unsettling question that hangs in the air for millions. But the uncertainty goes deeper than our livelihoods. It goes to the heart of what we believe. With the rise of incredibly realistic deepfakes and AI-generated content, the age-old saying, "Seeing is believing," is no longer a reliable guide. We're entering a world where we can't always trust our own eyes or our own ears. When a video, a picture, or an audio clip can be flawlessly fabricated, how do we know what is real? This erosion of shared reality is a profound darkness. It creates a space where facts become fluid and manipulation becomes dangerously easy. And that leads us directly to the third shadow, which perhaps feeds all the others. This is the darkness of mistrust. There's a deep and growing skepticism aimed at the very institutions that were once the bedrock of our society. Trust in the media, in the government, in major corporations feels as if it's at an all-time low. We've become a nation of cynics, and for good reason at times. We've been let down, we've seen promises broken, and we've been bombarded with conflicting narratives from every direction. The result is a feeling of being untethered. It's like trying to navigate in a dense fog, where every landmark you once used to get your bearings is now obscured. When you don't know who to trust for reliable information, whether it's about public health, the economy, or world events, the natural response is to retreat, to trust only a very small circle, or sometimes no one at all. This darkness of mistrust is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance, a constant questioning of motives that wears down the spirit. It makes cooperation harder and fuels the very polarization we started with. So, you see, these three shadows, the darkness of misunderstanding, the darkness of technological uncertainty, and the darkness of institutional mistrust, they aren't separate. They bleed into one another. They feed each other. A manipulated video can deepen the political divide. A lack of trust in institutions makes us more anxious about new technology. They combine to create this unsettling landscape of 2025. This feeling that things are more fragile than we once thought. This is the metaphorical, eternal night that the old prophecy seems to speak to so powerfully today. It's a darkness born not from the cosmos, but from the very human heart of our modern world. A darkness of our own making? So, when we hold up that mirror, what exactly do we see reflected back in the landscape of 2025? If this eternal night is a metaphor, then what is it a metaphor for? I think, if we're being honest with ourselves, we don't have to look very far. The feeling is all around us. It's a quiet hum of anxiety beneath the surface of daily life. It's not a darkness that blots out the sun, but one that can dim the spirit. And it seems to come from a few distinct, yet overlapping, shadows. The first, and perhaps the most painful for many of us, is what we might call the darkness of misunderstanding. Think about the conversations that now feel difficult. The ones around the holiday dinner table, or with an old friend from high school, or even the neighbor you've known for 20 years. It feels as though the political divide in our country has become more than just a difference of opinion. It's grown into a chasm, separating not just neighbors, but families. It's a profound disconnect where it feels like we are no longer speaking the same language, even when we're using the same words. We've stopped seeing a person with a different viewpoint and started seeing a label, a caricature, and in that space, genuine communication withers. The common ground we once took for granted seems to have eroded, leaving us on opposite sides of a canyon, shouting into the wind. This isn't just a political issue, it's a deeply personal one. It's a quiet grief for the easy connection we used to share. That, right there, is a kind of darkness, a social darkness that leaves people feeling isolated and misunderstood, even in their own communities. And layered on top of this social divide is a new and unsettling shadow, one cast by something we created ourselves. This is the darkness of uncertainty, born from the staggering pace of technology. In 2025, we live with a new kind of unknown, the rise of artificial intelligence. On one hand, it's a tool of immense promise, capable of wonders we are only just beginning to grasp. But on the other, it casts a long shadow over the job market and the very nature of truth itself. There's a quiet worry in the back of so many minds. Will the skills I've spent a lifetime building still be valuable in 5 or 10 years? It's a deeply unsettling question that hangs in the air for millions. But the uncertainty goes deeper than our livelihoods. It goes to the heart of what we believe. With the rise of incredibly realistic deepfakes and AI-generated content, the age-old saying, "Seeing is believing," is no longer a reliable guide. We're entering a world where we can't always trust our own eyes or our own ears. When a video, a picture, or an audio clip can be flawlessly fabricated, how do we know what is real? This erosion of shared reality is a profound darkness. It creates a space where facts become fluid and manipulation becomes dangerously easy. And that leads us directly to the third shadow, which perhaps feeds all the others. This is the darkness of mistrust. There's a deep and growing skepticism aimed at the very institutions that were once the bedrock of our society. Trust in the media, in the government, in major corporations feels as if it's at an all-time low. We've become a nation of cynics, and for good reason at times. We've been let down, we've seen promises broken, and we've been bombarded with conflicting narratives from every direction. The result is a feeling of being untethered. It's like trying to navigate in a dense fog, where every landmark you once used to get your bearings is now obscured. When you don't know who to trust for reliable information, whether it's about public health, the economy, or world events, the natural response is to retreat, to trust only a very small circle, or sometimes no one at all. This darkness of mistrust is exhausting. It requires constant vigilance, a constant questioning of motives that wears down the spirit. It makes cooperation harder and fuels the very polarization we started with. So you see, these three shadows, the darkness of misunderstanding, the darkness of technological uncertainty, and the darkness of institutional mistrust, they aren't separate. They bleed into one another. They feed each other. A manipulated video can deepen the political divide. A lack of trust in institutions makes us more anxious about new technology. They combine to create this unsettling landscape of 2025, this feeling that things are more fragile than we once thought. This is the metaphorical eternal night that the old prophecy seems to speak to so powerfully today. It's a darkness born not from the cosmos, but from the very human heart of our modern world. The legend of the 3 days of darkness. So, now that we know the man, let's turn to the legend that has become so powerfully attached to his name. Among all the hundreds of cryptic quatrains he wrote, there is no single prophecy that captures the modern imagination or inspires such primal fear as the one known as the 3 days of darkness. This is a story that has been passed down, whispered, and debated for generations. And while, as we'll soon discover, its direct connection to Nostradamus is complex, the legend itself has a life of its own. It's a vision of an ultimate trial for humanity, and the way the story is told is always hauntingly specific. It begins, they say, without any predictable warning. Not with the slow setting of the sun, but with a sudden, unnatural fall of night. Imagine it. One moment, it's an ordinary afternoon. The world is going about its business. The next, a profound darkness descends upon the entire earth. Not the twilight of a storm, not the deep black of a moonless night, but a thick, palpable, suffocating blackness that seems to swallow all light and all sound. The sun, the moon, the stars, they all vanish as if they never existed, and in that same instant, the legend says, all of man's creations of light will fail, the power grid will go dead, street lights will flicker out, car headlights will refuse to turn on, flashlights will be useless, a phone screen will not illuminate. Every source of artificial light we depend on, from the grandest city grids to the humblest battery, will be rendered inert. The world will be plunged into a silence and a blackness it has not known since before the dawn of creation. And in that disorienting void, panic will begin to take hold. But within the legend, there are instructions, a set of rules for survival passed down like a sacred inheritance. The instructions passed down through the legend are chillingly specific. Seal your homes, go inside, lock your doors, and do not, under any circumstances, leave. You must cover every window, every opening to the outside world. Use heavy curtains, blankets, boards, anything you can find. Leave no crack for a curious eye to peer through, because the world outside will no longer be for you. And what of light? How are you to navigate this impenetrable gloom? The legend says there will be only one source of light that will defy the darkness. All other forms of light would be extinguished, leaving only the humble, blessed candle to defy the oppressive gloom. According to the tradition, only candles that have been blessed by a priest beforehand will be able to be lit. And, miraculously, a single one of these candles will burn for the full 3 days and 3 nights without being consumed. It will be the only shield against the absolute blackness. For 72 hours, the legend continues, the world must remain in this state of lockdown. Families and communities are to gather in their sealed homes around their single blessed candle and pray. They are to do nothing but wait and keep their faith, shutting out the world beyond their walls. Because what is happening out in that darkness is the most terrifying part of the story. The legend speaks of terrifying forces being unleashed upon the earth. Some interpretations say that demons and evil spirits will be freed from hell to roam the planet, hunting for souls. They will imitate the voices of loved ones, a child crying for their mother, a spouse calling from just outside the door, a friend begging to be let in. They will use every trick, every emotional plea to lure people outside. And this brings us to the most terrifying warning of all. Whatever happens outside, no matter the screams or the sounds you hear, you must not look out. For what walks in that darkness is not meant for human eyes. To look upon these beings, the legend warns, would mean instant death or madness. You must not answer the door. You must not even peek through a covered window. Your home, lit by its blessed candle, is your only sanctuary, your faith, your only shield. For 3 full days and 3 full nights, this trial will continue. It is described as a great purification, a divine cleansing of the world, a time of immense terror and a profound test of faith. This is the legend in its most powerful form. It's a story that taps into our most primal fears, the fear of the dark, the fear of the unknown, the fear of being isolated, and the fear of a world turned upside down where the familiar rules no longer apply. It is a stark and terrifying vision, and for centuries this very vision has been laid at the feet of the physician from Provence, Nostradamus. Unraveling the threads, the true historical origins. That powerful, terrifying story we just walked through, the sealed windows, the blessed candles, the voices in the dark, is the legend that has become the cornerstone of Nostradamus's modern fame. It is, for many, his most chilling and relevant prophecy. And this brings us to a crucial and perhaps surprising point in our journey, a point that requires us to act not as believers or skeptics, but as historical detectives. If you were to take a copy of Nostradamus's complete works, all 942 of his cryptic quatrains, and read them from beginning to end, searching for this specific prophecy, you would not find it. Let me say that again, just to be perfectly clear. The detailed story of a worldwide 72-hour period of darkness, the instructions about blessed candles, the warning not to look outside, none of these specific elements appear anywhere in the writings of Michel de Nostradamus. You'll find verses about wars, famines, floods, and great fires. You'll find obscure references to celestial events, but the iconic, detailed narrative of the 3 days of darkness is entirely absent. So, if the trail goes cold with Nostradamus, where does it lead next? If he isn't the source, then where did this incredibly vivid and specific story come from? To find the answer, we have to travel away from 16th century France and forward in time about 250 years to 18th and 19th century Rome. And we have to enter the world not of public prophecy, but of private Catholic mysticism. The true source of this legend is found in the visions of a remarkable woman named Blessed Anna Maria Taigi. She was not a famous author or a public figure like Nostradamus. Anna Maria Taigi, who lived from 1769 to 1837, was a wife and the mother of 7 children. By all outward appearances, she lived a humble, ordinary life. But within the church, she was known as a profound mystic, a woman who received intense spiritual visions. She was a counselor to bishops and cardinals, and even to the Pope himself. And it is in her extensive spiritual writings that we find the original, detailed prophecy of the 3 days of darkness. In her visions, Taigi described a pitch-black darkness sent as a divine chastisement upon the earth. During this time, she prophesied, the faithful were to remain indoors, praying the rosary before a blessed candle. She spoke of the air becoming pestilent and of the earth being stalked by demons who would be released to punish the wicked. She warned that anyone who looked out with curiosity would perish. The parallels are not just similar, they are identical. The blessed candles, the sealed homes, the duration of 3 days, the warning not to look outside, it's all there, recorded decades after Nostradamus lived and died. Her visions, along with those of a few other Catholic mystics from that era, are the true historical wellspring of this prophecy. But this theme didn't appear out of thin air for Anna Maria Taigi either. It's a motif that has deep, ancient roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Think back to the Old Testament, to the book of Exodus. The 9th plague that God sent upon the Egyptians was a supernatural darkness. The Bible describes it as a darkness that could be felt, a thick gloom that lasted for 3 days, confining the Egyptians to their homes. But, the scripture notes, all the Israelites had light in their dwellings. The theme of a divine darkness that separates the faithful from the unfaithful is an ancient one. You can also find echoes of it in the writings of the prophets, who spoke of a future day of the Lord that would be a day of darkness, not light. And in the New Testament's book of Revelation, darkness is a key feature of the tribulations that precede the end times. So, Anna Maria Taigi was tapping into a powerful spiritual archetype that had existed for millennia. This, then, brings us to the final, fascinating question. So, how did this Catholic mystical prophecy become so famously attached to Nostradamus? The answer lies in the human tendency to weave compelling narratives. Over time, stories evolve. They get told and retold, and in the process, they get streamlined and strengthened. Nostradamus is the quintessential figure of prophecy. His name is practically a brand name for seeing the future. He is mysterious, ancient, and famous. Anna Maria Taigi, outside of certain Catholic circles, is largely unknown. We've traveled quite a distance together in this first part of our journey. We've walked through the unsettling shadows of our modern world, stood in the shoes of a 16th century physician, and felt the chill of an ancient legend. It's clear that this prophecy of a great darkness, regardless of its true origin, touches upon something real and deeply felt within us. It may not be a prediction about the cosmos, but it certainly resonates with the human experience, especially right now. And so, as we pause here before continuing our journey, I'd like to ask you a question, not about history or prophecy, but about your own life. This metaphorical darkness that we've been discussing, that feeling of division, of disorientation, of mistrust, is this something you feel? in your own life or in the community around you? And more importantly, in those moments, where do you find your light? What gives you hope, clarity, or a sense of connection when things feel dim? I invite you to take a moment and share your reflections in the comments below. This isn't just a channel. We see it as a space for us to explore these bigger questions together. Your personal wisdom and unique perspective truly enrich this conversation for everyone. Prayer for light, from prophecy to a personal practice. In our last section, we explored the shadows of prophecy and the very real anxieties of our modern world. Now, we turn from simply observing the darkness to actively cultivating the light. This brings us to the very heart of our conversation, the prayer for light. And let's be clear what we mean by this. This isn't about a specific religion or doctrine. It's a universal practice, available to anyone. It is the simple, intentional act of turning our focus inward towards clarity, towards compassion, towards courage. Think of it as a daily prayer for protection, not from some mysterious force outside our walls, but for protection from the turmoil inside them. It's a shield against the internal forces we all face: fear, despair, and confusion. It's how we find our footing in uncertain times and begin to build our own light from within. The first prayer, guarding the mind, the light of clarity. So, where does our prayer for light begin? It begins in the one place we have the most control, yet often feel the most overwhelmed: our own minds. This first prayer is the prayer for the light of clarity, and its purpose is to gently push back against that first shadow we talked about, the overwhelming darkness of information overload and confusion. Let's be honest about the world we live in. From the moment we wake up, we are hit with a constant barrage of information. Notifications on our phones, breaking news alerts, an endless scroll of opinions and arguments on social media, emails, text messages. It's a digital fire hose pointed directly at our consciousness, and it never turns off. It's a condition some have called infobesity, a state of being so overfed with information that we can no longer properly digest any of it. And the side effects are clear: a low-grade, persistent anxiety, a feeling of being constantly reactive instead of intentional, and a sense of powerlessness in the face of so much noise. This constant mental static is the very opposite of clarity. It's a kind of fog. So, how do we begin to clear it? The wisdom for this is not new. In fact, it's ancient. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus gave us the key almost 2,000 years ago, and it's a piece of advice that has never been more relevant. He reminded us, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Think about the power in that simple statement. The news cycle, the stock market, the latest political outrage, the opinions of others, these are external circumstances. We have virtually no control over them. But our response, our attention, our inner peace, that is ours. Choosing where to place our focus, choosing to protect our own mental state, that choice is the ultimate prayer for clarity. It's not about ignoring the world. It's about choosing to engage with it on your own terms. So, let's talk about 3 simple practical ways to bring this prayer for clarity into your daily life. The first practice is what I call the sacred silence. This is a commitment to give yourself a small, protected period of time each day, even just 10 or 15 minutes, that is completely free from information input. No phone, no television, no podcasts, no radio. For just these few minutes, you intentionally create a quiet space. You don't have to do anything special. You can simply sit in a comfortable chair and watch the world outside your window. You can take a slow walk around your neighborhood and pay attention to the feeling of the sun on your skin. You can just close your eyes and listen to the sound of your own breathing. The goal isn't to empty your mind. That's a very difficult thing to do. The goal is simply to stop pouring more into it. It's like having a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, it will never clear. But if you just set it down and let it be still for a little while, the sediment naturally settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear again. The sacred silence is how you let the muddy waters of your mind settle. The second practice is the information diet. Just like we are mindful of the food we put into our bodies, we must become mindful of the information we feed our minds. Most of us are consuming the mental equivalent of junk food all day long, little bits of outrage, gossip, and fear that offer no real nourishment. An information diet means making conscious choices. First, choose your sources wisely. Instead of grazing across dozens of websites and social media feeds, perhaps choose 2 or 3 trusted, level-headed sources for your news. Second, choose your timing. Instead of checking your phone constantly throughout the day, set aside 1 or 2 specific times, maybe once in the morning and once in the early evening, to catch up on what you need to know. For the rest of the day, give yourself permission to be present in your own life. This single change can dramatically reduce anxiety because you are no longer living in a state of constant, low-level alert. You are taking back control of your attention. And the third, and perhaps most powerful practice, is the question of intent. This is a mental filter you can use before you click on an article, watch a video, or listen to a news report. Before you consume it, pause for just a second and ask yourself a simple question. What is my intention here? Is knowing this likely to help me become a more informed, compassionate, or peaceful person? Or is it more likely to feed my fear, my anger, or my sense of hopelessness? Be honest with yourself. There is a difference between information that empowers you and information that just agitates you. Learning a new skill or understanding a different perspective is empowering. Reading angry comments or watching pundits yell at each other is almost always just agitating. This question isn't about becoming ignorant, it's about becoming wise. It's an act of self-respect, a declaration that your inner peace is valuable and worth protecting. These 3 practices, the sacred silence, the information diet, and the question of intent, are the pillars of our first prayer. They are simple, they are practical, and they are entirely within your control. They are how we begin to push back against the fog and invite the warm, steady light of clarity back into our minds. The second prayer, tending the heart, the light of compassion. Once we begin to create a space of clarity in our minds, we can then turn to the work of the heart. For if the mind is where confusion takes root, the heart is where the pain of division is truly felt. This brings us to our second prayer, a prayer for the light of compassion. This is our gentle answer to that painful shadow of misunderstanding and separation that we see all around us. It can feel, sometimes, as though we are forgetting how to connect. The world can seem so fractured, so full of anger and blame, but the beautiful truth is, connection is our birthright. It is wired into our very biology. Neuroscientists have discovered something called mirror neurons in our brains. In the simplest terms, these are cells that fire not only when we perform an action, but also when we see someone else perform that same action. When you see someone smile, a part of your brain lights up as if you were smiling. When you see someone in pain, a part of your brain registers a faint echo of that pain. We are, quite literally, built for empathy. We are designed to feel with one another. The darkness of division is an unnatural state for us. The prayer for compassion, then, is not about creating something new, but about returning to who we truly are. It's about gently clearing away the dust of fear and judgment that has covered over our natural ability to connect. This wisdom is as old as humanity itself, woven through every great spiritual tradition. In Christianity, It's expressed in the simple, profound elegance of the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is a call to see ourselves in every person we meet, to recognize our shared humanity as the ultimate guiding principle. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a beautiful practice called metta, or loving kindness meditation. It's a quiet, gentle practice of extending warm wishes, first to ourselves, then to our loved ones, then to neutral people, and finally, most challengingly, to those with whom we have difficulty. You simply repeat phrases like, "May you be well," "May you be happy," "May you be free from suffering." It's a practice that slowly, gently softens the hardened edges of the heart and reminds us that every single person, without exception, shares the same fundamental desire for peace and happiness. These traditions point us toward the same truth. Compassion is a skill. It is a muscle that we can strengthen with practice. And the most powerful and immediate way to practice it in our daily lives is through the practice of deep listening. So much of the time, when we are in a conversation, we aren't truly listening. We are waiting for our turn to talk. We are formulating our counter-argument in our head. We are listening to find the flaws in the other person's logic. We are listening to win. Deep listening is the opposite. It is listening to understand. It is entering a conversation not with an agenda, but with a sense of genuine curiosity. It is creating a sacred space where the other person feels safe enough to share their story. You don't have to agree with what they are saying. You don't have to abandon your own principles. You only have to recognize that their perspective, their feelings, and their experiences are real for them. So, I want to offer you a small challenge, a simple prayer in action. The next time you are in a conversation with someone you disagree with, try this. Listen with the sole intent of understanding why they feel the way they do. Listen for the story behind their opinion. Listen for the fear, or the hope, or the personal experience that shaped their belief. You don't have to agree. You only have to honor their humanity enough to truly hear them. This single shift can transform a battle into a bridge. Let me tell you a quick story. There were two neighbors, Frank and Sarah. Frank was a retired factory worker in his late 70s, and his yard was filled with political signs for one party. Sarah was a third-grade teacher in her late 40s, and her yard had signs for the opposing party. For the better part of 2 years, they lived side by side in a state of silent, polite hostility. They'd give a tight-lipped nod when getting the mail, but that was it. A wall of mistrust stood between their homes, as real as any physical fence. One autumn, a massive storm blew through their town, and a huge old maple tree that stood on the property line between their houses crashed down. Its branches sprawled across both of their driveways. They were both trapped. After the storm passed, they met outside, surveying the damage. The conversation was awkward at first, just short sentences about the storm and the cost of tree removal. As they started working together, trying to clear away some of the smaller branches, Frank mentioned how he was worried about his grandson, who was struggling to find a steady job in this economy. He spoke about his fear that the world was changing too fast, that the values he grew up with were disappearing. Sarah listened, and instead of arguing about economic policy, she heard the voice of a grandfather worried about his family. She told him that she worried constantly about her students. She saw kids coming to school hungry, and she feared that the world wasn't offering them the same opportunities she had. In that moment, standing among the wreckage of the fallen tree, something shifted. They weren't a conservative and a liberal anymore. They were two people, two neighbors, who both deeply cared about the future of the next generation. Their proposed solutions were different, the signs in their yards were different, but the core motivation, a foundation of love and concern, was exactly the same. They never did convince each other to change their vote. That was never the point, but the wall between them came down. The next week, Frank brought over a cup of coffee for Sarah while she was gardening. and Sarah brought him a loaf of banana bread. They started talking, really talking, not about politics, but about their lives, their families, and their gardens. That is the light of compassion. It doesn't always change minds, but it always opens hearts. It is the quiet, patient work of healing our world. One conversation, one shared cup of coffee at a time. The third prayer, the light of purposeful action. We have cleared a space in the mind, creating room for the light of clarity. We have tended to the heart, making way for the light of compassion. But now we arrive at the third and final prayer, the one that brings our inner work out into the living, breathing world. This is the prayer that gives our intentions, hands and feet. This is the prayer for the light of purposeful action. Because here is the truth. A clear mind and a compassionate heart, if they do not lead to action, can leave us feeling stuck. We can understand the world's problems, we can feel empathy for those who are suffering, and yet be left with a profound sense of helplessness. We look at the scale of the division, the noise, the uncertainty, and we ask ourselves a very honest question. But what can I, one person, really do? That feeling of being small and powerless in the face of immense challenges is perhaps the most draining darkness of all. And the prayer of the hands is its direct antidote. The answer begins with a simple image, a still, quiet lake. Imagine you are standing at the edge and you pick up a single small pebble. You toss it into the center. For a moment, it disappears. But then, from the point of impact, a tiny circle appears on the surface, and then another circle forms around it, and another, and another. These concentric rings expand, silently, steadily, across the entire surface of the water, until they gently touch every single part of the shore. Your small, simple action has affected the entire lake. This is the ripple effect, and this is the principle that gives our small, everyday actions their immense power. We are not asked to calm the entire stormy ocean at once. We are simply invited to toss our own small pebble of kindness, of help, of decency into the waters immediately around us. We cannot always control where the ripples go, but we can trust that they do go, expanding outward in ways we may never even see. This requires that we redefine what it means to change the world. The pressure of that phrase is crushing. It implies a grand, heroic, impossible task. So let's release ourselves from that burden. Perhaps the prayer is not to save the entire world at once, but to bring a moment of light to one person's world today. This is a goal that is achievable, it is real, and it is how the world has always truly been changed, not by one grand gesture, but by millions of small, faithful ones. So, how do we do this? Where do we start? We start in the circles closest to us. First, in the family. In an age of anxiety, one of the greatest gifts you can give is to be a non-anxious presence. For your children, your grandchildren, your spouse, or your siblings who are struggling with the weight of the world, your prayer of action can be to simply be a safe harbor. It is the act of putting down your phone, looking them in the eye, and truly listening without judgment. It's choosing not to add your own fear to theirs, but instead to offer a calm and steady presence. This is not passive. It is a powerful, active form of love that creates a sanctuary of peace in a turbulent world. Next, we expand the circle outward, in the neighborhood. The fabric of a strong society is woven from the simple threads of neighborly kindness. These actions don't have to be complicated. It's the simple act of a warm hello to the person you pass on your daily walk. It's helping an elderly neighbor bring their groceries in from the car. It's organizing a small cleanup day at the local park. These gestures may seem trivial, but they are not. They are the visible signals that say, "We are in this together. I see you. You matter." They are the acts that slowly, patiently rebuild the trust and connection that we feel has been lost. And finally, we move to the next circle, in the community. This is where we can offer our time and our talents in a more structured way. It could be volunteering for a couple of hours a week at a local food bank, an animal shelter, or the library. It's finding a cause that speaks to your heart and offering the simple gift of your presence and your help. Or perhaps you have a skill to share. Maybe you're a great gardener, a patient woodworker, or you know how to balance a budget. Offering to share that knowledge with someone who needs it is a profound act of service. None of these actions will stop wars or solve global crises overnight, but they will do something incredibly important. They will create light where there was darkness. They will create connection where there was isolation. They will create hope where there was despair. They transform us from passive observers into active participants in the healing of our world. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. so powerfully reminded us, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? This question pulls us out of our own heads, out of our own anxieties, and into the shared human experience. The prayer of the hands of purposeful action is our answer to that question. It is the beautiful, tangible proof that even in a world that feels dark, one person, one small act of kindness, can still start a ripple of light that touches the farthest shore. We have explored three prayers: the prayer of the clear mind, the compassionate heart, and the helpful hands. These are not just ideas, they are pathways to reclaim our peace and our purpose in a world that so often feels like it's trying to take them from us. And now, the invitation is for you. Of the three paths we discussed, which one resonates most with you right now, in this season of your life? Is it the need for mental clarity, the call for deeper compassion, or the urge to take purposeful action? In the comments below, we invite you to share not just a thought, but a gentle commitment. It doesn't have to be grand. For example, you might write, "This week, my prayer will be the light of compassion. I will practice deep listening with a family member." By sharing your intention, you do two wonderful things. You not only strengthen your own resolve, but you become a source of light and inspiration for everyone else in this community who is on this journey with you. Let's create a tapestry of light together. The Dawn After Darkness, Lessons for Humanity in a New Era. In our journey together, we've walked through the ancient shadows of prophecy, and we've found our footing in the very personal practice of a prayer for light. We've moved from the external world of legend to the internal world of lived experience. And now, we arrive at the conclusion, not just of our story, but of the prophecy itself. Think back to how the ancient legends of the 3 days of darkness always end. They don't conclude in eternal night, but with a magnificent dawn. The story always says that on the fourth morning, the sun is said to return, the air itself feels purified, and a profound peace descends upon the earth. But what if that isn't just a hopeful ending to a scary story? What if the prophecy is not about us waiting passively for the sky to clear? What if we are meant to realize that through our simple, daily acts of clarity, compassion, and purpose, we become the very dawn we are waiting for? This is the prophecy fulfilled. It is the dawn of awareness. It's that quiet, internal shift when we realize that while we cannot control the chaos of the world, we have absolute power over our own response to it. This dawn isn't the end of our challenges. The world will still be a complicated place. Instead, it is the beginning of a new way of living within those challenges, a way that is conscious, intentional, and lit from within. Lesson 1. Prophecy as a mirror, not a map. This brings us to the first great lesson that emerges from the dawn of our own awareness, a piece of wisdom that can fundamentally change our relationship with the future. It is this: these ancient prophecies are best understood not as a map, but as a mirror. Let's think about that for a moment. What is a map? A map is a tool of certainty. It shows you a fixed landscape. It tells you where to go, what turns to take, and what your destination will be. For centuries, this is how many people have treated the prophecies of figures like Nostradamus. We've treated them like a map to the future, a pre-written script of human history. When we see prophecy as a map, it puts us in a very specific and very powerless state of mind. We become passive observers of our own destiny. We scan the daily news, looking for events that match the cryptic verses. We see a conflict in a certain part of the world or a strange weather event, and we whisper, "This is it. This is what was foretold." We become watchers, waiting for the next signpost on a road we believe is already paved. This is the danger of passive waiting. It fills us with a sense of fatalism and anxiety. It suggests that the future is something that happens to us, a series of events barreling down a predetermined track, and our only role is to brace for impact. It robs us of our agency, our sense of responsibility, and ultimately, our hope. But what if we change the metaphor? What if we put down the map and instead pick up a mirror? A mirror does not show you where you are going. It does something far more immediate and far more powerful. It shows you exactly who and where you are right now. It reflects the present moment in all its complexity, its light, its shadows, its beauty, and its flaws. This is the true power of these enduring legends. The reason a story like the 3 Days of Darkness has survived for centuries is not because it's an accurate prediction. It's because it's a perfect mirror for timeless, universal human experiences. It taps into what the great psychologist Carl Jung called archetypes, primal patterns of the human psyche that we all share. When we look into the mirror of this prophecy, what archetypes do we see? We see our primal fear of the dark, which is really our fear of the unknown. We see our terror of chaos, the fear that the fragile structures of our civilization could crumble. We see the deep-seated hope for a great trial that leads to purification and rebirth. The idea that suffering can have a redemptive meaning. This story is not about the future. It's about the deepest parts of what it means to be human right now. And this is where the real work begins. This is the wisdom of active reflection. When you look into a mirror, you don't just passively wait. You act. You see what needs attention. You see what needs to be cleaned, or mended, or celebrated. So, when we hold up the mirror of this prophecy to our world in 2025, it invites us to stop asking, "Is this going to happen?" and to start asking far more powerful questions. First, we ask, what in our current world is creating this darkness? The mirror reflects our divisions, our mistrust, our anxieties. This question forces us to take ownership of the present moment, to diagnose the real sources of our collective unease, not as some fated event, but as the result of our own actions and choices. Second, the question turns inward, and this is the most courageous one. What actions of mine, however small, might be contributing to it? Do I participate in the culture of blame? Do I share unverified information that spreads fear? Do I turn away from conversations that feel uncomfortable? This isn't about self-blame, it's about radical self-honesty. It's about recognizing that we are not separate from the world we see, but are active co-creators of it. And finally, we ask the question of hope. What potential for light does this mirror show me within myself and within my community? It reflects our capacity for compassion, our desire for connection, our ability to take purposeful action. The mirror shows us not only our problems, but also our power. The psychologist Carl Jung had a concept he called the shadow. The shadow is all the parts of ourselves and of our society that we refuse to look at, our fears, our prejudices, our unhealed wounds. As he might suggest, the darkness in these prophecies is a reflection of our collective shadow, and he was very clear about the solution. The only way through it is not to run from it, not to pretend it doesn't exist, but to integrate it, to turn and face it, to understand it, and to bring the light of consciousness to it. This is the great liberation of seeing prophecy as a mirror. It frees us from the anxiety of a future that is already written. It places the power, the responsibility, and the hope for a better world squarely back where it has always belonged, in our own hands. The future is not a destination on a map that we are hurtling towards. It is a reality that we are actively creating in every moment, with every choice we make. The prophecy is not a warning about what will be. It is a profound reflection of who we are and a powerful invitation to choose who we want to become. Lesson 2. The nature of humanity in an age of anxiety. Once we understand that these prophecies are a mirror, it leads us to our second and perhaps most personal lesson. This is the lesson about ourselves. By looking at how we react to these stories of darkness and light, we learn something profound about the very nature of being human in this modern age of anxiety. The mirror, in the end, shows us a portrait of ourselves, with all our vulnerabilities and all our incredible strengths. The first thing we see is our craving for certainty. Why are we so drawn to these dramatic, sweeping predictions? Why does the idea of a Nostradamus, a single figure who knows the script, hold such power? It's because we are living in a world that feels overwhelmingly complex and unpredictable. The pace of change is faster than ever before. The systems that govern our lives, economic, political, technological, are so interconnected and vast that no single person can fully grasp them. In the face of this complexity, the human mind naturally craves simple answers. We long for a sense of order, a feeling that someone, somewhere, understands the plan. A prophecy, even a frightening one, offers a strange kind of comfort because it provides a narrative. It suggests that the chaos is not random, but is part of a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. This deep-seated need for certainty is not a flaw. It's a fundamental part of our wiring. It's a legitimate spiritual and psychological need. But it is also a vulnerability. It's a craving that can make us susceptible to easy answers, to charismatic figures who claim to have all the solutions, and to fear-based narratives that simplify the world into a battle of us versus them. Recognizing this craving in ourselves is the first step toward managing it with wisdom. The second thing the mirror reflects is the fragility of connection, the metaphorical darkness of division that we feel so acutely in our society reveals just how delicate our social bonds truly are. For much of human history, our connections were forged by necessity in small towns, close-knit communities, and interdependent families. Now, in an age of digital media and hyper-individualism, those bonds have become more voluntary and therefore more fragile. We see how easily fear can sever those bonds: fear of the other, fear of losing our identity, fear of the future. We see how misinformation, amplified by algorithms designed to provoke emotion, can act like a solvent, dissolving the trust that holds a community together. The prophecy's image of people sealed in their homes, afraid of what's outside, is a powerful metaphor for the emotional isolation that many feel today. It's a sobering reminder that community and trust are not givens. They are precious, living things that require constant tending, care, and protection, or they will wither. But then, after showing us our vulnerabilities, the mirror reflects something else. It shows us something astonishing, something that shines through even the deepest cracks. And that is the incredible resilience of hope. For every tendency toward fear, there is an equal and opposite capacity for courage. For every impulse toward division, there is a deep, abiding instinct for compassion and cooperation. And this isn't just a nice idea. It is the central, observable fact of human history. It is precisely in the darkest times, in the midst of crisis and disaster, that the very best of our human nature is most brilliantly revealed. The prophecy's final act, the return of light, is not wishful thinking. It is a testament to an undeniable truth about the human spirit. Our capacity to endure, to rebuild, and to find light in the most unexpected places is perhaps the most powerful force in the universe. We see this every single time there is a natural disaster. Think of the images you've seen after a major hurricane or a series of tornadoes. Yes, you see devastation. But what else do you see every single time? You see neighbors checking on neighbors, strangers helping to pull people from the rubble. You see volunteers setting up shelters, cooking hot meals, and offering a shoulder to cry on. I remember reading about a small town in the Midwest that was hit by a devastating flood. The waters rose so fast, people had to leave with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The whole town was a sea of muddy, contaminated water. It was a picture of absolute despair. But in the days that followed, something incredible happened. A call for help went out, and from hundreds of miles away, an army of ordinary people descended on the town. They weren't FEMA, they weren't the government. They were farmers with tractors, contractors with heavy equipment, church groups with food and water, and just regular families who loaded up their cars with cleaning supplies and drove all day to help people they had never met. They waded through the mud, tearing out ruined drywall, cleaning out family photos, and offering simple, quiet comfort. There was no talk of politics, there were no labels, there was only the shared work of rebuilding a broken world. One reporter asked an old farmer why he had driven 6 hours to help. He just looked at the reporter, his face streaked with dirt, and said, "Because it's what you do. Because it's what you do." That is the resilience of hope in action. That is the human spirit refusing to be defeated. This capacity for goodness, for selfless action, is not the exception. It is the rule, waiting just beneath the surface of our daily anxieties. It is our greatest strength, our deepest truth. The mirror of prophecy, in the end, does not just show us our fears. It reflects back to us our own immense and often forgotten capacity for light. Final prayer, carrying the light forward. And so, we come to the end of our time together. We began this journey with a chilling prophecy from a bygone era, a story of a great and sudden darkness. We've walked through the pages of history, through the complexities of our modern world, and through the quiet corridors of our own hearts. And we have arrived here, not at a final answer, not at a concrete prediction, but at something far more valuable. We have arrived at a personal choice in this present moment. We have arrived at the understanding that the future is not something we wait for, but something we create. The light is not something that returns to us, but something that shines from us. So, as we prepare to part ways, let us conclude with one final prayer. Let this be our final prayer, a prayer not of words whispered in the dark, but of living enacted in the light. A prayer that we carry with us, in our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, as we step back into the world. May we have the wisdom to guard our minds. In an age of endless noise, may we have the wisdom to seek silence. In an age of confusion, may we have the wisdom to seek clarity. May we have the wisdom to choose what we allow into our inner world, to nourish ourselves with truth and understanding, and to gently turn away from the empty calories of anger and fear. May our minds be a sanctuary of peace. May we have the courage to open our hearts. In an age of division, may we have the courage to listen. In an age of judgment, may we have the courage to understand. May we have the courage to see the humanity in those with whom we disagree, to look past the labels and into the eyes of a fellow traveler. May our hearts be a bridge, not a fortress. And may we have the strength to engage our hands. In an age of helplessness, may we have the strength to act. In an age of overwhelming problems, may we have the strength to serve in small, meaningful ways. May we have the strength to pick up our own small pebble and toss it into the waters, trusting in the ripples. May we find our purpose not in changing the entire world, but in bringing a moment of grace to the small piece of it that is right in front of us. May our hands be instruments of kindness and healing. This is the prayer of living, the wisdom of a clear mind, the courage of a compassionate heart, the strength of helpful hands. This is how we protect ourselves from any darkness, internal or external. This is how we find our footing on unstable ground. This is how we endure. And this, in the end, is how we become the dawn. The journey through these deep waters has been a long one, and if you are still listening to my voice at this very moment, you are part of a very special group of fellow travelers who chose to walk this path all the way to the end. And because of that, before we go, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. If you are still here with me, would you please type the number 1 in the comments below? Just the number 1. And I ask this not for any algorithm, but simply for me, so that I know that there are friends who have walked this entire path with me. Your presence, your quiet company on this journey, is the greatest encouragement there, island. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for your time, for your attention, and for your thoughtful spirit. May you carry this light with you until we meet again on our next journey of discovery. Be well.